Hello, and welcome to the fourth episode of Someone You Love with Joseph Antonio. I am very eager to introduce my fourth guest on the podcast. He is a man, he is a myth, he is a legend, and he is Ethan Smith. Ethan is an actor, singer, and musician currently based in Chicago, Illinois. We met first during our time as emerging professional residents at the Milwaukee Repertory Theater, and I have been lucky enough to continue to watch him shine ever since then. Ethan's got a deep love for music. Think Led Zeppelin, Van Halen, Greta Van Fleet, and yes, of course, One Direction. Ethan is an incredible presence on and off stage, and I had such a fun time chatting with him during this episode. I hope you enjoy the fourth episode of Someone You Love with Ethan Smith.
When I was growing up, my stepdad was a big rock and roll guy, like hard rock, and that was where I was first introduced to certainly AC/DC, CCR, Creedence Clearwater Revival is a big one for us too. But even bands like Sweet, Chicago, 25 or 6 to 4, and bands like that. That was where like rock and roll was heavily influential. But then like growing up, I didn't really listen to a lot of rock and roll. And I would say, crazily enough, what got me into my current genre of music that I would say is my genre,
Sure.
Classic rock. I would say Beatles are their own thing. 1968 to 1988 is like the 20-year period that I listened to. I would say 95% of the music I listened to is in there. Sure. What got me into that genre was One Direction. I'm not bullshitting you. I don't know if you actually know this.
I don't.
I am a bigger One Direction fan than you've ever met.
Whoa.
I'm not kidding.
Wait,
and not
for
only
real?
am I not kidding about that, I'm talking not about like all of the YouTube and the fandom and like all of that directioners. I'm talking about the music. I don't know what it is besides just really loving the music. I swear to God, I really
Whoa.
I went through a period like the Spotify Wrapped for 2021 for me was
One Direction.
I was top 0.5% for One Direction. So from there,
That's interesting.
I just started like realizing I needed a backbeat and certainly guitar forward music, even though they branched into like kind of synth pop sometimes,
Right.
But like their Midnight Memories album is a big rocker, and it's where they also were given a lot more license to start writing music of their own, which is where Louis' influence was super big, is because he loves that kind of rock and roll stuff, And so I remember I like saw a TikTok about something, and it was like making fun of Greta Van Fleet, and I'd never listened to Greta Van Fleet, and I was like, well, what is this? And I was like, this is incredible. And at the time they had very recently released, so we're in like 2022 now, 2021, somewhere in there, Battle at Garden's Gate, which is their second LP and their third kind of like project they released. And I just hooked into that music. So transitioning out of One Direction was Greta Van Fleet. And then from there, just friends who are like, hey, if you like this, you should really know the origin, which is where Led Zeppelin comes in, and I won't go into the whole actual chronology of that, but I firmly stand by One Direction is the reason that I love Van Halen. I swear that's true.
Wow. And is it the musical, like, is it the musical stylings that have got you in? Like, what is it about One Direction that really like you found that you really enjoyed?
I mean, all 5 of them vocally are just outstanding. Sure. And like people who think that Louis is not a good singer, I'm like, you're a fucking idiot. I truly just don't start, But like I think it could be back to like, I was in choir for a long time, and the harmonies in One Direction are super tight. They're often split into 5 parts, which is remarkable for the fact that boys started when they were, the youngest of them at the beginning was 15, right? And, for their 5 or 6 years that they had together, like throughout all 5 albums, not so much on their first, but like starting with, Take Me Home, like the harmonies are out of this world. And I think that I really latch on to that, with One Direction specifically. I was kind of like, I can hear all these different harmonies, and because of how my brain works, I was like, I can't stop listening to this until I can tell you who is singing which harmony on which song.
That's so interesting.
And so I would say probably I'm not as tight on that as I was. Like I probably couldn't tell you like off rip anymore, but like there was totally a period of time that I could tell you who was on which harmony, whose voice was singing which solo line every time.
Wow.
Every single time.
That's so funny that you say that, because I feel like I don't listen to a lot of bands. I don't listen to a lot of like group singers.
Yeah, and see, I need a band.
Interesting.
I need a band. Very few solo artists on my searches, you know.
Is it about the vocal? Is it about the vocals because there's multiple, or is it?
I've always said I need a singer. And that's true of rock and roll as well. It's the difference between, you know, anybody can fit into a genre, but what makes that genre work, right? Even when we talk about Van Halen, like, you know, David Lee Roth is a controversial rock and roll singer. Some people hate his voice. I fucking love his voice. I think it's fantastic. Very few rock baritones exist, you know what I mean? And even he has stratospheric vocals sometimes, you know, not just the screaming. But he's a rock singer with a vibrato. It's not usual,
right?
You know, it's definitely against the grain. And so when I listen to that band, it's like Eddie Van Halen is the reason that band exists. Eddie Van Halen is one of the greatest guitar players of all time, full stop. Don't ever let anyone tell you he's not. But when I'm listening to the music, you know, oftentimes I am choosing to listen mostly to the vocal, you know, or the drums, you know, which is
something else you do.
Yeah, I'm a drummer, and so that's part of that for sure. But it's like when it's Van Halen and it's Eddie Van Halen's show,
right?
You know, whether it was with David or with their 10 years with Sammy Hagar, like I can choose to lock into the guitar. It's great to listen to, but yeah, for me, it's always a voice.
Do you think that there's a societal like shift in the way that we create theater that points more towards like a really outstanding, clever, quote unquote perfect piece of theater right from the get?
Is the question like, are we putting pressure on fast tracking that?
The question is like, do you think there's more pressure as a society to create things that are really, really good from the get?
Yeah, I think that pressure just exists, right? Because you do want whatever you make to be of a high caliber.
Right.
With that said, you know, I think that you got to be careful with this because you don't want to discourage high expectations for yourself and the belief that an impact can be made, right? That's why we do it. That's what we were just talking about. So I think that the pressure is a good thing. I do think that it sacrifices some of the creative process and some of the grace and humanity in a process if the point is like, this is going to be really good and it's going to change lives. It's like you have to believe your piece has the potential to do that, but you can't judge. You end up judging yourselves based on its effectiveness, right?
Yeah.
And that just can't be. So I think that there is a shift. I would say that I don't know that I can say there's a shift because I haven't been in the industry very long. You know, I'm very new still. But I would say that I notice things like that. I notice people, our peers, you know, who are writing or whatever. I'm working on writing a script right now we had me and my friend Evan, who I'm writing it with, like we had a meeting and I just went, I didn't know it was true until I said it out loud as I was like, hey, I got to tell you, man, all of this that we've written, besides this, and this, most of which was his work. He's incredible, you know, I don't like. Not only do I not like it, I'm going to delete it, you know? And so he convinced me to make a second document.
I love
delete
that.
it there.
I love it.
Just in case you want to go back and
That's
reference.
A good friend.
You know? He's a good friend and he's a great creative as well. You know, but that's why I love working with creatives that make me feel good as a creative, because his response was, we don't have to go scorched earth on it. We just got to try something new. You know, if this is the tree of the story, we decided that this branch isn't exactly where we needed to be. So we just backed up a little bit and built another one. And I think that is productive.
Yeah. You
should have high expectations for yourself. Sure. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Whether or not there's been a shift, I don't know that I could speak on, but I think it's okay to have a pressure on yourself because you want to do well. You want to have high, I keep saying impact, but like, you know, like you want to do the thing.
Right. Well, and that's that's the thing. I like that you're saying high impact, because it's not necessarily about it. There's a social pressure of like, because the reason I'm curious is because that's something I face as an artist, is this kind of similar to what you're talking about of like, I want this to be good and I want it to be clever and I want it to be outstanding and I want it to like be unlike anything anybody's ever seen before. And those are things that you can't necessarily get on the first go. Sometimes you can.
Sure.
And hey, that happens, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of times it requires a first draft, a second draft, a third draft.
Yeah.
And I don't know what about my life or where in my life I lost that idea, because I remember in elementary school, like that was the thing, right? You write the first draft and then you like submit the thing and then you get it back and you write the second
they were
draft.
building that creative process with you. They
Right.
didn't call it that. Which maybe if they had,
Who would have held on to it, right? Because now it feels like this one has to be like, I almost feel like I have to be ready to share it with the world.
Yeah.
The second that it's done.
Yeah.
And yes, that's true. But also when you share it with the world, it doesn't have to be great.
Yeah.
It can
Well,
be good.
Your grade and my grade will forever be different by the simple nature of the fact that we are not the same person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I wonder, do you feel like it manifests for you in one discipline more than another? Like, I know
Sure.
I'm talking about writing a script right now, but
Yeah.
you know, when you say that, you're like, I'm losing that process. Like, do you feel stuck up on that or hung up on that, I should say, more in acting or in writing or in music? Like, what does that look like to you?
It's a great question. I think it happens a lot in my life. At most artistic avenues, it comes up. It's come up less and less in acting the more that I've worked on it. I know.
Say it again.
But it's the more that I've worked on it, right? Yeah, and so things like painting, drawing, it's so easy to be like, I have the person's face in my head, and like this,
and it's
person
not
is
showing up.
Yeah, and it's not showing up, and it requires a level of like you have to not sacrifice. It requires a level of like, what's the word? Like you have to forfeit yourself to it, right? You have to allow it to be.
You have to give yourself over to the fact that it is what it is.
It is what it is, and then it takes time. And I think I don't know. I feel like nowadays we've become so concerned with making things perfect.
Yeah.
I think it has to do with social media.
I was just about to say, I think the speed of information is actually impacting a lot of what you're talking about.
Right.
You know? Evan and I have talked about this before. Like, you know, artists have a wonderful avenue on social media platforms to share, like, new music, for example. Like, I'm writing this song, right? But people, you can't deny, criticize like TikTok songs, and by that I mean like a song that you clearly can tell was written. And call me an asshole if you want. You know I'm right about this. It was written so that it would blow up on TikTok, right? But the thing is, it took them a fraction of the time, right? Because the technology that we have at our disposal nowadays, you know, is rapid. If you need some sort of guitar lick in the style of whatever, there are just, you know, applications that can do that for you, right?
Absolutely.
And it takes away the grit and the human experience of a song. And we're talking about songs here, but like when we talk about generative AI art, I mean, that is just disastrous for creative process. So I do think that the pressures that you're talking about does exist in absolute relation to the speed at which we are perceiving that we're getting art, right? Yeah. And it used to just not be that way, you know? And frankly, even in our lifetimes, I mean, I'm 23, you know, you're 24, 25, like 24. It's not as if I'm talking about throwing it back to the 80s. Like, I remember as a kid, it was different, right? Yeah. You know, we were alive when the iPhone was invented. And so the exponential growth of technology and things, as wonderful as those advances can be, as we all know, we are having the same conversations about how is that impacting us as people, as how is it impacting us as artists, you know? Right. I think it's the same. I realized recently that I just fucking blow at EPAs. I do. I show up, I sit there, they hold you in the room when you're a non-union actor, you don't have your own slot, right? So you're just kind of hoping to get in, and if you get in, you better hope you don't blow it. And I was like, there's one surefire way to get better at this, and it's to show up to the goddamn auditions. You know what I mean? And all like accessibility and like work timing things aside, you know, I do have people who fear auditioning, and there's nothing wrong with having a fear of auditioning, but you have a choice, right? Like, how are you going to go about helping that along, you know? And I think it is just embracing it, you know what I mean? And just because something, like, I went to an audition, and I was terrible. Like, in 2020, early 2024, I was still at the rep, but I took the Monday that we have off, you know, to go up. And like, I got there, I had prepped the material, walked in, but the factor I didn't think was going to happen was that I showed up bright and early and was like second in line. And the only EPA I'd been to before, I'd waited till like 11:30 or something like that, you know? So you have some time to ground yourself and just chill, lock in. But I had like, you know, a nitro cold brew in my system and was standing before the panel at 9:20 a.m. So like, I just flew through it. The way I describe that audition is like, I couldn't get my feet underneath me and I couldn't get the words in my mouth. Like, it just, nothing went right. And then afterward I was like, so what did I learn? Caffeinate at a pace that makes it possible that if you're going to go in right away, you can do that. And also, bear in mind, is it the first or the second day of the EPA? If it's the second day, if you get there, you're one of like the earlier birds, you're going to get in. You're going to get in. Look at me. I'm serious. They're going to see you. And if you're not ready, doesn't matter. That's your slot, right? So I look back on that audition now and I'm like, yeah, that sucked, but A, they're going to see me again, and B, I gained a lot from that experience. Which is learning how to better prepare for that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
And better prepare for yourself. Right? That's the kicker, right? Is like, that's the tricky trap of like, well, I'm going to talk to my teacher and see what they learned about EPAs and do what they did, right? Because that's the thing, is some mentors...
Hey, you want to embrace the mentorship,
Right, and some mentors want to give you, like, it took me 10 years to learn this, and I'm going to teach you in 15 minutes so that you can save 10 years of your life.
Speed of information.
Right, and it's like, yes, and you take that information, but some of that information is not going to be useful for you because you've said this earlier, you and I are different people. And we are going to come to an EPA differently. And we're going to respond to being called to being second in line differently. And I think trying to prepare for the right, like trying to prepare for something that you've never done before, it's just encumbering. I feel
it's a challenge, you know.
As an understudy, there's an expectation to kind of sit by the sidelines and observe, take notes, gather as much information as you can without necessarily having access to the full like spec of the stage, all of the actors, all of the props, that sometimes even the director's eyes, like you're kind of asked to sit back, observe, with the potential that you may go on. Sometimes you have a guaranteed performance. Sometimes you don't. Often you don't. And so you're doing a lot of work without A, ever having to actually do it. And B, with the notion that you may not ever get to do it. And I'm curious to know, do you feel that that's important? Has that been important in your acting career and journey? And do you think it's important for young actors to pursue understudy
You're
roles?
asking me that because you know that I do. We've talked about that question so much. Yes, goddammit. I think that young actors should absolutely be aggressively pursuing understudy opportunities. I think you're out of your goddamn mind if you look at understudying any differently in terms of value or importance, you know, or respect. Certainly, I think that people look at understudying as being a second stringer, and it's just not true. You know what I mean? You don't book an understudy gig because you were 80% as good at doing everything that the overstudy does. What the fuck are you talking about? Take a look at Joey and I, really quick. Seriously.
I'm fishing for compliments, actually.
Did we, we came in and sold the same product in our Louis Le Prince callbacks? No, of course not. What we did came in with equal impact and value, right?
Yeah.
You know, the fit for me in the cast that is the principal cast is why I'm in the role.
Yeah.
And your talent and your work ethic that showed through in your callback preparation, they were like, that's who we need covering that role.
Yeah.
You know, I am so pro understudy and swing at any opportunity you can get as it relates to that, because also, especially earlier in your career, you don't get many opportunities to learn in a studio that you're not paying for, right? So how I treated my time at the Rep as an understudy was watching these incredible actors. I was getting paid to do that, to take acting class 6 days a week. That is remarkable. And like, you know, the Louis Le Prince understudy jobs are a little bit different because you aren't required to be there every day. Also, you know, storefront theater is different from regional theater in that like the pay is different. So you, as an understudy, the expectation is not that you're there 6 days a week, or we rehearse 5 days a week.
Yeah.
And also it would be nuts if you were all the power to you, but like nobody looks at you weird for that, right? Like that's just not, it's a bit of a different approach, right?
Sure.
I don't care how often a week you're in rehearsal. When you're in rehearsal, it's an amazing opportunity to learn.
On the Someone You Love podcast, my goal is to kind of highlight an artist, a Chicago-based artist that I admire and look up to, and am sort of want to learn more about your artistic journey. And it's also an opportunity for an artist to express their love and admiration towards someone in their life. And for the audience, if you don't know, I sent Ethan a Google form asking a little bit about someone that he loves, and you said your mother.
Yeah.
And if it's all right, I'd love to learn a little bit more about your mother.
Yeah, my mom, you know, growing up, eventually she was a single mother, you know, and I think that was like 8 or 9 when that happened, you know, and so she really was the epitome of like single mother. She is a college professor, and when I was in middle school, she went through the process of getting her doctorate, which is pretty incredible. And when she did that, at the same time, she was like picking up some extra work like on the side, like you know, like the whole like, well, single mom who works 2 jobs. Like I think she worked 3 at one point. You know what I mean? Sure. And like still found the time to like, well, like all 3 of us, you know, were in school at the time. My sister had just gone off to college, so you know, my oldest sister's in college. I'm 12 or 13, somewhere in there, and my youngest, my middle younger sister, I should say. I have a youngest sister who did not grow up in that house. She is my dad and my stepmom's daughter. So like,
gotcha.
You know, I got 3 sisters.
Sure.
You know, growing up in that household, like she set that precedent of like, you know, sometimes things are a lot of work, you know, but it's okay. You know, she still found time for me to be involved in like athletics when I was younger, obviously, but like getting into theater when I got to like late middle school, you know, and then into high school, like she was at all the shows. Like she helped out with like the parent stuff. She wasn't like a stage mom, but like was definitely like able to help out with like fundraisers or whatever, you know what I mean? And like was just very involved with that. And like that takes an amount of sacrifice of self, right, in order to be there for somebody. And so she taught me a lot about that, of like, you know, I don't have kids, and like I obviously, you know, so it's a very different point in our lives, but like I think back to like the effort she must have been exerting when I think about like I have a busy day at the school I work at, and coming home and like needing to like drink caffeine to go to the gym. Like I'm talking about physical energy, right? And she did it day in and day out, you know, and that's just incredible to me to think about that, you know. You know, and she values, you know, emotional honesty and communication, and she's been very open my whole life about learning more about that as she goes, right? You know, it's not like kind of what we're talking about actually with like, over 10 years, this is what I learned, right? But then you try to learn it right away. You know, my mother, especially like in my adulthood, we've had wonderful conversations about me being like, I think I'm learning this about myself. And she's like, yeah, I'm learning this about myself right now. You know what I mean? And she's in her 50s. So it's like, that's amazing that we are both kind of at points like that, so to speak. Like that I don't fear fucking up as much, because she is always willing to share like what she has discovered throughout her life and her adulthood, you know, as it relates to parenthood and also just it relates to being a person, you know. I've often joked, like, I think I figured out my parents were people when I was like 19.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's a weird moment.
It is.
Like when you reach adulthood, I think is typically when it happens. And like, it was just like, my mom is a person who is just like me, like trying to get shit done and like trying to have good things for people she loves and everything. And it just didn't, you take it for granted when you're a kid. And so like when I got to college, especially, I was like, wow, like that's so nuts, you know? So I don't know. She's, you know, even like, I have no shame about it. Like my mom knows basically everything about me. Like, you know, I share so much with her, you know, she's always an ear for that kind of stuff. You know, relationships, romantic or otherwise, like she's always there to like talk about, you know, and some people can't fathom that. They're like, your mom knows about like your dating life? I'm like, yes. You know what I mean? Because like, you can't trust your mom, you know? And like, let's point out, that is another privilege, right? Like being able to have that relationship with my mother, like I'm aware is not typical, you know? We wouldn't want to assign one typical relationship to a mother and a son, but you know, our relationship is that I can always come to her, you know, if I need it. And especially like with this new journey that I'm on of moving to Chicago and leaving the shelter of college is one thing, but then I mean, over the year that I spent in Milwaukee, you know, I started to develop a comfort there too. So it was this big transition to move to a bigger city in Chicago. Even though I'm from nearby, I did not grow up in the city at all, you know. And so like I'm learning everything new. Yeah. And she has been just so, you know, wonderful to be able to just be like, hey, can I call you and tell you about how the callbacks went yesterday? Because I just want to talk to you about it. You know what I mean? And she's like, always, you know. It's wonderful. Just amazing.
That's wonderful. It's really, really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
Ethan, I am so incredibly thankful you've joined me here today. I'm sure I've said it. I'm sure if you pull up all 3 videos, you'll be like, he says the same thing. But I am so honored that you were willing to take some time out of your day to come sit down with me and to talk a little bit about your artistry. It's something I really admire, something I'm so excited to get to continue to watch.
Thank you.
And before we go, I have a gift for you.
Oh no, what?
I've gotten you something.
I didn't know that. I really didn't know this was gonna happen.
I'm so glad you said that. So
what is this?
On the Someone You Love podcast, I am working on highlighting an artist. Yeah. An artist's love, my love to an artist's love to someone else. And then the third piece that I really want to make, you know, known is a community's love for an artist. I think highlighting an artist's impact is really important. And it's a hard, like we were saying, it's a hard job. Yeah. We're doing a hard thing. So, Ethan, I've asked one of your loved ones to write you a letter on why they love and admire you. And today I have a letter. I'm so excited to share this letter with you.
This is so crazy.
From Evan Carlson.
Wait, we were just talking about Evan.
You were. And I have a letter. I'm going to read it to you.
Okay. Oh, no.
Dear Ethan, I love and admire you because you inspire me every day as an artist and person. As a collaborator, you think about things deeply and don't land on the easy answers. As an actor, I admire the amount of work and thought you put into every role and every audition. As a friend, I love that wherever you go, community follows. When you meet people, they want to be in your circle because you make folks feel good about themselves. I've learned so much from you, and you've helped me enjoy life more fully. I will always remember our time in college and California fondly, and I'm excited to continue being friends with you here in Chicago. Keep drumming, keep thinking up acting theories, keep being you. Much love, Evan.
Wow. That is really beautiful. I'm what we say? I'm kerplempt? What is it? Verklempt. There we go. Yeah. That's the Yiddish for it. Wow. That's amazing. That's really cool that you do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, Evan knows how much I love him. Like he and I are really in lockstep, but that's a very special thing. You know?
I'm glad you said so because there is one of these for you.
For me? Wow.
You can take with you.
That is so beautiful.
that you can hold on to. I think it's so valuable to highlight how the community makes an artist feel and how much a community admires artists, because it can feel really lonely up here. You know, it can feel lonely in this work, and it's not always easy. And so the people that we have around us are what get us through.
No, it's beautiful. And it also, I guess it shows I'm doing at least something right. You know what I mean? You know, we don't do it for ourselves. We do it for that secret thing.
Yeah,
There
it is. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to the 4th episode of Someone You Love. If you enjoyed the episode, please consider leaving a review, sharing it with a friend, or following the show for more conversations like this. Until next time, take care, and don't forget to tell someone you love them. Come on, it's much easier than you think it is. I swear.
And now I want you to interview somebody that I know. You know what I mean?
I know. Get your letter in.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm hoping.
So how did you reach out to Evan?
Through Instagram.
Instagram, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
He didn't say a word to me.
I know.
I'll send a picture of that.
Yeah, please do. I'm really happy they didn't mention it.
Yeah, not at all. No.